she said. "Cowboy, I came to marry you." Then he realized she was the girl he saved 20 years. Jack Carson was a man of the open plains, the kind of cowboy people trusted without hesitation. He had spent most of his life working on the ranch that had been in his family for generations. The land was rough, the days long, and the work never seemed to end, but Jack loved it. From the first light of dawn when the golden sun touched the hills, to the quiet of night when the wind whispered through the tall grass, Jack felt at home in the wide open world. He was strong, dependable, and kind, but there was a quietness about him that few understood. He lived simply, never seeking attention or wealth, just content with his life among the cattle and the endless horizon. 20 years before, Jack had been younger and full of restless energy. He worked as a ranch hand at the time, still learning the ways of the land, the cattle, and the dangers that came with living so close to the wild. Life was harder then, and the frontier had its share of dangers, from sudden storms to wild animals, and sometimes people who meant harm. One late summer afternoon, while Jack was checking the fences near the edge of the forest, he heard faint cries carried by the wind. At first, he thought it was just the sounds of animals, but the cries grew sharper, more desperate. He followed the sound into the dense woods, moving quickly but carefully. Branches scratched at his face and arms, and the ground was uneven, but Jack's instincts guided him. Soon he stumbled upon a scene that made his heart tighten. A small girl, no more than 8 or 9, was cowering behind a fallen log. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with dirt and tears, and she clutched a small bundle of belongings to her chest. She looked terrified, as if the world itself had turned against her. Jack approached slowly, keeping his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "Hey there," he said gently.
"It's okay. I'm here to help." The girl flinched at his voice, but there was something in the calm strength of Jack's eyes that made her hesitate.
Slowly, she peeked out from behind the log, her small face marked by both fear and curiosity. My family?" she stammered. They're gone. He came." Her voice broke into a sob, and she hid her face in her hands. Jack knelt beside her and put a steady hand on her shoulder. "I'm not going to hurt you." "I'll make sure you're safe. Can you tell me your name?" "Amara," she whispered. "Amara. White Feather." The name struck Jack not just because it was beautiful, but because it reminded him of something fragile and precious, something he felt he needed to protect. Jack helped Amara to her feet and held her hand as they carefully made their way back to the trail that led to the nearest settlement. On the way, she told him bits and pieces of her story. Her family had been attacked while traveling through the woods. She had run as far as she could, hiding wherever she could find cover. For days, she had survived on whatever she could find, never giving up hope that someone would come for her. And now, finally, she had found Jack. By the time they reached the small town, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jack took Amara to the sheriff, who helped find her relatives in a nearby settlement. Even though she was placed in a safe home, Jack couldn't shake the memory of her frightened eyes, the small trembling of her hand as she clutched his, or the quiet strength she had shown despite everything. He visited her whenever he could, bringing food, toys, or just spending time with her, listening to her stories and helping her feel safe again. That summer and the years that followed left a mark on both their lives. Jack had saved Amara physically, but she had also left a mark on his heart. He couldn't explain why, but the memory of her stayed with him. He often found himself thinking about the small girl with the bright eyes and the brave heart. Time passed, as it always does, and life carried them in different directions. Jack continued working on the ranch, eventually inheriting it from his family, becoming a respected figure in the town. Meanwhile, Amara grew up, learning from her relatives, moving through life with courage and intelligence, never forgetting the man who had saved her when she was most vulnerable. Jack's life was quiet, but full. He had friends in town, a steady routine, and a deep love for the land he worked. He rose with the sun, tended to the cattle, repaired fences, and rode through the hills to check on the herds. He knew every ridge, every stream, and every hidden path. People trusted him because he was dependable, fair, and brave. But even with all this, there was a small part of him that sometimes felt incomplete. He never married, never sought a family of his own, and sometimes late at night he would find himself thinking about that small girl he had once saved, wondering where she was and if she remembered him. Little did Jack know those thoughts would soon lead to something unimaginable. The years that had passed like sand through fingers were about to connect the past and present in a way he could never have expected. But for now, Jack's days were filled with the simple, honest work of a cowboy and the quiet comfort of life on the ranch. The memory of Amara, though faint, lingered like a gentle shadow, waiting for the day it would return. And so, the story of Jack Carson, the cowboy with a brave heart and a life of solitude, began its next chapter, unknowingly leading to a reunion that would change everything. The morning was calm and quiet on Jack Carson's ranch, with a soft breeze moving through the tall grass and the distant hills glowing gold in the early sunlight. Jack had just finished feeding the cattle and was repairing a broken fence post when he noticed a dust cloud rising from the main trail leading to the ranch. At first he thought it might be a neighbor riding through or a trader bringing supplies, but as the figure drew closer, he realized it was a young woman on horseback, riding with purpose and confidence. She wore a simple dress suitable for traveling, her boots dusty from the trail, and a wide-brimmed hat shaded her face from the sun. Yet, even with the hat hiding part of her, Jack felt a strange sense of recognition he could not place. The woman's posture was confident, yet there was a softness in her movements, a gentle way she held the reins and adjusted her hat. Something about her seemed familiar, but Jack could not immediately recall what it was. The woman stopped her horse near the ranch gate, dismounted, and walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said politely, her voice clear and steady. "Are you Jack Carson?" Jack nodded, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "I am. Can I help you? My name is Amara," she said with a slight smile. "I've come to marry you." His hand hovered over the fence post as he blinked, trying to process what he had just heard. The words struck him like a sudden storm. He had known many women in town, but none had ever expressed anything like this. And yet there was something in the way she said it, calm and certain, that made him pause and listen closely. "Marry me?" Jack repeated, his voice a mixture of disbelief and caution. I don't understand. We've never met before, have we?" Amara shook her head, a small, knowing smile on her lips. "We have, long ago. You saved my life, Jack. You don't remember me, but I've never forgotten you." Jack felt his heart skip a beat. His mind raced through memories he hadn't thought about in years. The small, frightened girl he had found in the woods, her tiny hands clutching a bundle, her tears and sobs, the promise he had made to protect her. Could it be possible? Could this woman standing here before him really be the same girl he had saved 20 years ago? "Amara," he said slowly, testing the name. I saved a girl once, yes, but you're grown now." "I didn't think." His voice trailed off as he tried to gather his thoughts. "Yes," Amara said softly, "I am grown now. And I came to find you because I never forgot the man who gave me a chance at life. I came to marry you because you saved me when I had no one else." Jack felt a swirl of emotions he had not experienced in a long time. Surprise, confusion, disbelief, and a deep, strange warmth he could not explain. He had always remembered the girl he saved, but he never imagined he would see her again, and certainly not as a young woman standing in front of him declaring that she had come to marry him. The town was small, and word traveled quickly. People began to gather near the ranch, curious about the unexpected visitor. Whispers spread like wildfire, and soon neighbors and townsfolk were watching the scene unfold. Jack could feel their eyes on him, and a part of him bristled at the thought of being judged. But he pushed that aside. Right now, the most important thing was the young woman in front of him and the story she carried. "Sit," Jack said, motioning to the porch. "We need to talk. I need to understand who you are." Amara nodded and followed him. She seemed calm and composed, but Jack noticed a quiet intensity in her eyes. It was the same determination he had seen in her as a child, the same courage that had allowed her to survive when the world had seemed so cruel. As they sat, she began to tell her story. She spoke of her childhood, of the days and years after Jack had saved her. She spoke of how she had been placed with relatives, how she had grown strong and independent, and how she had never forgotten the cowboy who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. She described the moments she had spent thinking about him, wondering if he had ever thought of her, wondering if she would ever see him again. Jack listened quietly, his hands gripping the railing of the porch. The memories were coming back in fragments, her small voice, the way she had clung to him, the fear in her eyes. He remembered promising her that she would be safe, that he would not let anything happen to her. And now, hearing her speak, he realized that promise had never left his heart. You really are Amara," he said finally, his voice soft but filled with awe.
I can't believe it! You've grown
Into a remarkable woman. Amara smiled a little shyly. "I had to grow up fast, but I never forgot the man who saved me." "I had to find you, Jack. I had to tell you who I am." Jack felt a mixture of pride, awe, and something he had not felt in many years. Hope. Hope that perhaps life had a way of bringing people together even after so much time had passed. But he also felt a deep sense of caution. This was not a small matter. People would talk, and he needed to be sure that her intentions were genuine. Over the next few days, Amara stayed at the ranch. She helped with chores, learned the rhythm of the ranch life, and shared stories of her travels and experiences. Jack watched her carefully, noting her strength, her kindness, and her intelligence. She was no longer the small, frightened girl he had saved. She was a woman of courage and grace, someone who had faced the world and survived. Despite the growing feelings in his heart, Jack remained careful. He wanted to understand her fully, to make sure that her presence in his life was sincere and not a fleeting whim. He spent time talking with her, asking questions, and learning more about the years they had missed. Amara answered openly, never hiding her past or her intentions. She spoke with honesty and clarity, and Jack began to see that her love and admiration for him were real. As they worked side by side on the ranch, a quiet bond began to form once again. Memories of the past mingled with the present, and Jack began to recognize the girl he had once saved in the woman before him. He saw the same bravery, the same determination, and the same gentle heart. Slowly, the disbelief began to fade, replaced by a growing recognition and a deep, unexpected warmth in his chest. The townspeople continued to watch, curious and skeptical, but Jack paid little attention to them. What mattered now was the connection he shared with Amara. And for the first time in many years, he allowed himself to hope that the past and present could come together, that the girl he had once saved might be the woman he could love. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Jack and Amara sat on the porch watching the cattle graze in the fading light.
I never thought I'd see you again,
Jack said quietly.
"Ha! I never forgot you," Amara replied, "and I had to come."
"I had to tell you that you changed my life." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words and the memories they stirred. He realized that their story was not just about survival. It was about connection, trust, and a bond that had endured despite years apart. And though he did not yet know what the future held, he knew one thing for certain. The girl he had saved 20 years ago had returned, and she had come into his life with love, courage, and a determination that could not be denied. And in that quiet moment, on the porch of his ranch, Jack Carson felt the stirrings of something he had not felt in a long time. An unfamiliar but welcome warmth in his heart. The promise of a new chapter and the possibility that life could bring back what had once been lost in a most unexpected way. Days passed on the ranch, and Jack Carson found himself thinking more and more about the young woman who had appeared at his doorstep. Amara. Even saying her name out loud felt strange, almost magical, as if time had folded back on itself to bring the past into the present. Every morning he watched her move around the ranch, her hands skillful with the chores, her eyes attentive to the cattle, the fences, and the land. She was no longer the little girl he had rescued, trembling in fear and clutching a small bundle. She had grown into a strong, confident woman. Yet, in her expression and gestures, he recognized pieces of the child he had once protected. One afternoon, Jack decided to ask her about something he had been trying to place in his mind for days. "Amara," he began slowly as they repaired a broken fence together. Tell me more about when, back then. About the forest, the night you ran. Amara paused, looking thoughtful, and then nodded.
I remember it clearly, she said quietly. I remember the dark trees and the way the shadows seemed to move. I remember running and being so scared I thought I would never make it out. And then I remember your hand reaching for mine.
You lifted me, held me close, and told me I would be safe. Jack's chest tightened. The memory hit him like a sudden wind. He remembered the girl clinging to him, trembling and crying, and he remembered the fierce determination he had felt to keep her safe no matter what. I remember you, he said, his voice low and steady. You were small, so scared, but somehow brave. I promised you I wouldn't let anything happen to you.
I never forgot that promise. Amara's eyes glistened with tears, but she smiled through them. I never forgot either.
You saved me when I had no one. You gave me a chance to live, to grow up, to have a future. I had to find you. I had to tell you who I am. The realization struck Jack fully now. He could no longer doubt it. The memories were too vivid, too real. The way she had smiled shyly as a child, the way her hands had clutched his coat, the fear in her eyes and the trust she had placed in him, all of it matched the young girl he had rescued so long ago. She had returned to him, grown into a woman, but still carrying the memory of that day in her heart. For the first time in many years, Jack felt a rush of emotions he had never allowed himself to feel. Relief, joy, wonder, and a deep, strange warmth in his chest. And yet, there was also hesitation. How could he allow himself to think of Amara in this new way? She had been the child he saved. Now she was a woman, strong and independent, and she had come with intentions that stirred feelings he had not felt for a long time. He struggled with his thoughts, trying to separate the memories of the past from the reality of the present. Amara noticed the conflict in his eyes. I know this is a lot, she said softly, her voice calm but full of understanding.
I know it might feel strange, but I had to come. I had to be honest with you. I don't expect you to decide anything right away. I just needed you to know who I am and how much you meant to me.
Her words struck Jack deeply.
He realized that this young woman, whom he had known as a child, had grown up carrying not only gratitude but also love and trust for him, and now she had returned, seeking a connection that went beyond friendship or respect. He felt honored, humbled, and a little overwhelmed all at once. Over the next few days, Jack and Amara spent more time together, not just on chores but in conversation. They shared stories of the years they had missed, laughing and sometimes growing quiet as memories of the past surfaced. Jack learned about Amara's life with her relatives, the struggles she had faced, and the small victories that had shaped her into the woman she was today. She spoke of the lessons she had learned, the dreams she had pursued, and the strength she had gained.
All with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived the worst and emerged stronger. As Jack listened, he began to see the connections between past and present.
He remembered the little moments of kindness he had shown her and realized how much they had shaped her life. And as he watched her laugh, move, and care for the land and animals, he saw the same determination and courage that had shone through in the child he had once saved. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, casting a golden glow over the ranch, Jack and Amara sat together on the porch. The air was warm, filled with the scent of grass and the soft sounds of cattle in the distance. Jack looked at her, really looked, and saw not only the woman she had become, but also the little girl he had rescued. The bond between them was no longer just about memory or gratitude. It was about understanding, trust, and an unspoken connection that had endured the years apart.
Do you ever think about that day?
Jack asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer.
All the time,
Amara replied.
I think about it every day. I remember how scared I was, and I remember how safe I felt with you. You were my hope when I had none. You were my protector.
Jack felt a lump in his throat. He realized that the memory of that day had shaped not only her life but his own. He had carried it with him quietly, never speaking of it, never imagining that one day it might come back in this way. And now, It had returned, stronger and more vivid than ever. Their conversations often turned to small, seemingly ordinary details that triggered memories from the past. Amara mentioned the way Jack had lifted her over a fallen log, the sound of the river near the forest, and even the small wooden charm he had given her to keep her safe. With each recollection, Jack felt the threads of the past weaving back together with the present, creating a tapestry of connection, trust, and shared history. Yet, despite the growing closeness, Jack remained cautious. He cared deeply for Amara, but he knew that life was unpredictable, and he did not want to rush into decisions that could have consequences for both of them. He wanted to be sure that her intentions were true, that her feelings were not just fleeting emotions. And he wanted to understand his own heart fully before he acted. Amara, sensing his hesitation, never pressured him. She understood that their situation was unusual and delicate. Instead, she focused on being present, sharing her thoughts, helping with the ranch work, and allowing Jack to see her for who she truly was, a woman of courage, intelligence, and deep emotion. Over time, the townspeople began to notice the change in Jack. He was quieter in some ways, more thoughtful. And occasionally he would smile at something Amara said or did in a way that made people curious. Whispers circulated, but Jack paid little attention. His focus was on the woman who had returned to him, the connection they were rediscovering, and the memories of a day 20 years ago that had never truly left his heart. One afternoon, while riding together across the hills to check the cattle, Amara reached for Jack's hand briefly. The touch was light, almost casual, but it sent a wave of recognition and warmth through him. It was a gesture of trust, of closeness, and of shared history. Jack realized in that moment that their bond was not just a memory. It was alive, growing stronger with each passing day. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Jack and Amara paused on a hill overlooking the ranch. The world seemed still, and for the first time in many years, Jack allowed himself to imagine a future where the past and present could coexist. A future where the girl he had saved 20 years ago had returned, not just as a memory, but as a partner, a companion, and perhaps, one day, someone he could love in a deeper way. Jack realized that the connection between them was rare and precious.
It was not just about gratitude or kindness. It was about the enduring bond that had survived years apart and the trust that had never faded.
And in that moment, he understood that the story of their lives was far from over. In fact, it was only beginning to unfold in ways he could never have imagined. The days on the ranch grew busier as spring gave way to early summer. Jack and Amara worked side by side, riding across the hills, checking the cattle, repairing fences, and tending to the land. The connection between them had grown stronger, almost like a bridge linking the past and present. Jack had begun to trust his feelings, and Amara's calm determination helped him see her not just as the girl he had saved, but as a remarkable woman who had shaped her own life. Yet, as their bond deepened, challenges began to appear, small at first, then larger, testing both their hearts and their courage. The first challenge came from the townspeople. Small towns are filled with gossip, and the sudden appearance of Amara at Jack's ranch had set tongues wagging. Some admired her courage and were curious about her story. Others whispered, questioning the relationship.
He's an old man, one neighbor muttered.
She's just a young woman with a fancy story.
Who knows what her intentions are? Jack could feel the skepticism in their eyes, the unspoken judgments, but he ignored it. What mattered was the woman in front of him, the one who had risked everything to find him. Still, Jack knew he could not completely ignore the townspeople. He had spent his life earning respect through hard work and honesty, and he could not let rumors tarnish his reputation. He decided to act with calm patience, letting his actions and the truth speak for themselves. Amara understood this. She never complained or argued with the townspeople. Instead, she focused on being herself, showing her sincerity through kindness, honesty, and skillful work around the ranch. Over time, people began to notice her intelligence, her work ethic, and her respectful manner, slowly earning their trust. While Jack and Amara faced judgment from the town, a more immediate threat emerged from the past. One evening, a rider arrived at the ranch with urgent news. A small band of men, known troublemakers from the neighboring territory, had been spotted near the outskirts of Jack's land.
They had caused trouble before, stealing livestock and threatening ranchers, and their presence was a warning that danger was near. He had faced threats before, but now with Amara at the ranch, he felt a new layer of responsibility. He could not afford to let anything happen to her.
The next few days were tense. Jack patrolled the borders of his land with extra caution, keeping an eye on the distant hills and valleys. Amara stayed close, helping when she could and observing his careful movements. One evening, as they were checking the fences near the far pasture, they spotted signs of the men: broken branches, fresh tracks, and scattered stones. The realization that danger was approaching made both of them alert. Jack looked at Amara, seeing the same determination in her eyes that had carried her through childhood.
"We'll get through this,"
he said quietly, gripping his hat. Together. When the troublemakers arrived, it was under the cover of night. Their intention was clear. They wanted to intimidate Jack, take what they could, and assert control over the territory. But Jack, experienced and prepared, faced them with calm courage. He positioned the ranch hand strategically and made sure Amara was safe inside the main house. From the porch, he could see her eyes, steady and unafraid, giving him a sense of reassurance. The confrontation was tense, but brief.
Jack's courage and strategy outmatched the intruders. He had faced danger before, but this time was different.
He was not alone in the presence of Amara. Her calm bravery and quiet confidence gave him a strength he had not realized he possessed. The men, realizing they could not succeed, retreated into the night, leaving the ranch intact. Jack and Amara stood together, side by side, watching the stars appear over the hills, feeling a sense of victory not just in the safety of the ranch, but in the bond they had shared through the challenge.
The danger from the past reminded Jack of something important. The connection between him and Amara was not only emotional but also practical. They had to trust each other, rely on each other, and face challenges together. It was not enough to simply care for one another. They had to be partners in every sense, ready to defend the ranch, the animals, and their lives. Amara proved herself without hesitation, showing courage that matched his own.
Jack realized that this young woman, who had once been a frightened child, had grown into someone capable of facing the world and standing beside him as an equal. As the days passed, their bond deepened not just through work and danger, but through small moments of shared life.
They cooked together, mended clothes, and sat quietly on the porch in the evenings talking about hopes, dreams, and memories.
Jack noticed little things: how Amara laughed when the wind caught her hair, the way she moved carefully around the cattle, and the gentle kindness she showed to every living creature on the ranch. Each moment reinforced the realization that she was no longer just the girl he had saved, but a woman whose heart, intelligence, and courage he admired deeply. Despite the growing closeness, Jack's caution remained.
He cared for Amara, and the memories of her childhood made him protective. He wanted to ensure that any decisions about their future were thoughtful and sincere. Amara understood this and never pressured him. Instead, she allowed time to guide them, knowing that love that grows from shared history and mutual respect is stronger than passion alone. One afternoon, while walking along the river that ran through the ranch, Amara shared a story from her childhood. She told Jack about the nights she had spent under the stars, thinking of him, wondering if he remembered her, and hoping that someday, somehow, their paths might cross again.
She spoke of her struggles and her triumphs, and Jack listened, amazed at her resilience and grace. The more he learned about her life, the more he admired her, not only for the woman she had become, but for the strength she had shown in overcoming obstacles. Jack felt a shift within himself. He began to see that love was not just about romance or attraction. It was about trust, respect, shared experiences, and mutual support. The past had brought them together, but the present was what truly mattered. Amara's presence reminded him of what it meant to care deeply for someone, to share responsibilities, and to face life's challenges together. As the summer days continued, the ranch thrived. Jack and Amara worked tirelessly, but they also found moments of joy and laughter. They rode horses across the hills, watched sunsets over the open plains, and shared stories of the past and dreams for the future. The hardships they faced, from judgmental townspeople to threats from the outside, only strengthened their connection. Together, they discovered that love was not just a feeling, but a bond forged through shared struggles, courage, and understanding.
Through it all, Jack realized that Amara was no longer the small child who had clung to him in fear. She was a partner in every sense. Her presence brought him hope, joy, and a renewed sense of purpose. And though the road ahead would not always be easy, he knew that together they could face whatever challenges life placed in their path. The trials of that season became a turning point.
Jack and Amara had faced external threats, judgment, and uncertainty, yet their bond had only grown stronger. They had discovered that trust, courage, and mutual respect were the foundation of any lasting connection. And as they stood together on the porch one evening, watching the stars appear over the hills, Jack knew with certainty that the story of their lives was not just about survival or memory. It was about love, partnership, and the promise of a shared future. The summer air was warm and full of life, with the sound of birdsong and the gentle rustle of the wind through the tall grass. On Jack Carson's ranch, life had returned to its familiar rhythm, yet something had changed.
The work was the same: feeding cattle, repairing fences, checking the hills, but now it was shared, made lighter and fuller by Amara's presence. Jack had grown used to her laughter, her quiet strength, and the ease with which she moved through the ranch and his life.
He could no longer imagine the ranch without her. Yet, even with the peace settling over the land, Jack still wrestled with his feelings. Love, he realized, was complicated. The girl he had once saved 20 years ago was now a woman, and the depth of her emotions, her trust, her courage, her devotion, challenged him in ways he had never faced before. He knew that their bond was unique, shaped by memory, gratitude, and shared experiences, but he wanted to be certain before taking the next step. He needed to fully understand his heart. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Jack and Amara sat together on the porch, watching the cattle graze. The quiet of the evening was comforting, but the weight of unspoken words hung in the air. Jack finally turned to Amara, taking her hand gently in his.
"Amara," he said softly, "I've spent a long time thinking about this, about you, about us, and I need to tell you, I remember everything. I remember the day I found you, the fear in your eyes, the promise I made to keep you safe. And now, seeing you here, I realize my heart has always held a place for you."
Amara's eyes glistened with tears, and she smiled softly, squeezing his hand.
"Jack, I've waited for this moment my whole life. I never forgot you, and I knew somehow that we would meet again. I love you, not just for the man who saved me, but for the man you are today." The words were simple, but the emotions behind them were profound. Jack felt a surge of warmth, hope, and certainty. The hesitation and doubt that had lingered melted away. The past and present had finally converged, and he realized that life had given him a second chance, a gift he had not expected. With the bond between them now clear, Jack and Amara began planning the next chapter of their lives. Their love was no longer just a memory or a hope. It was a living, breathing reality.
They shared their intentions openly, discussing the life they wanted to build together, the ranch they would care for, and the community they would continue to be a part of. Every conversation, every plan, brought them closer together and strengthened their commitment. The townspeople who had once whispered and questioned their relationship began to see the genuine connection between Jack and Amara. The respect they had earned through courage, honesty, and hard work replaced skepticism with admiration. People noticed how they complemented each other, how Amara's intelligence and bravery matched Jack's experience and steadiness. Slowly, the town embraced their union, recognizing the rarity and beauty of a love that had endured the tests of time and circumstance. As summer moved toward fall, the preparations for their wedding began. The ceremony was simple, held on the ranch, surrounded by rolling hills, cattle, and the wide-open sky.
Friends, family, and neighbors gathered to celebrate the union, witnessing not just a marriage, but the coming together of past and present, of courage, trust, and enduring love.
Jack and Amara stood together, holding hands and exchanging vows that reflected not only their commitment to each other, but also the journey that had brought them to this moment.
"I promise to honor you, respect you, and stand by your side,"
Jack said, his voice steady but filled with emotion.
You have been my hope, my courage, and my heart, and I will love you every day of my life.
Amara's eyes shone with tears of joy. I promise to love you, to trust you, and to walk with you through every challenge and joy. You saved me once, and now we will save and support each other every day. When the vows were complete, they sealed their promises with a gentle kiss, a symbol of the love that had survived years apart, and the trials that had tested their bond. The crowd cheered, not just for the union of two people, but for the story that had inspired them all. The story of a cowboy who had once saved a frightened child, and the woman who had returned to share her life and love with him. After the ceremony, Jack and Amara walked hand in hand across the ranch. The land had always been a place of work, responsibility, and solitude for Jack, but now it felt like home in a new way. It was a place where love and memory, courage and trust could grow together. The sunset seemed more vibrant, the hills more alive, and the wind carried a sense of promise and hope that neither of them had fully understood before. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a joyful rhythm. Jack and Amara continued to work the ranch, care for the animals, and maintain the land. But now, every task, every chore was shared. The burdens were lighter, the days brighter, and the evenings filled with laughter and conversation. They celebrated the small joys of life, the birth of a calf, a successful harvest, a quiet evening watching the stars, and found that happiness often came from the simplest moments shared together. At night, as they sat on the porch listening to the sounds of the ranch, Jack often reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The memory of the day he first found Amara, alone and scared in the woods, was still vivid in his mind. He realized that saving her had not only changed her life, but had shaped his own in ways he had never imagined. And now, decades later, their reunion had brought a fulfillment he had never thought possible, a love that was deep, enduring, and true. Amara, too, often thought of their journey. She remembered the fear, the uncertainty, and the loneliness she had felt as a child, and she marveled at how far they had come. She cherished the courage, patience, and honesty Jack had shown, and she knew that their love was a gift forged from both struggle and trust. Every glance, every word, and every shared moment reinforced the bond that had survived time and distance, danger and doubt. Together, Jack and Amara built a life full of warmth, hope, and connection. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, became a home filled with laughter, love, and shared dreams. Their relationship was not just a romance. It was a partnership, rooted in respect, shared history, and a deep understanding of one another. Years later, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the hills, Jack turned to Amara and said quietly, "I never imagined life could bring us back together like this." Amara smiled, resting her hand on his. "Life has a way of surprising us," she said softly.
It gave me you once, and now it has given us a lifetime together. Jack nodded, feeling the truth of her words in his heart. The past had shaped them, the challenges had tested them, and the love they shared had endured.
They had found each other again, and this time, there would be no separation. Their story, once filled with fear and uncertainty, had transformed into one of hope, courage, and lasting love. And so, the cowboy who had once saved a frightened little girl and the woman who had returned to share her life with him began their new chapter together. The ranch, the hills, and the wide-open sky bore witness to a love that had survived time, danger, and distance, a love that would endure for the rest of their days. Their hearts were full, their lives intertwined, and their story a testament to the power of courage, trust, and the enduring bond between two souls destined to find each other, no matter how many years had passed.